So good evening. We know that people will be joining us as we go along. The change of time, I hope, has not caused too many problems. I know that everybody who's here in the Zoom call feels like an old friend, and that's lovely to have you here again, joining us for praying together in Jerusalem. Some people out there in Facebook and YouTube land may not be familiar with the fact that Praying Together in Jerusalem is a partnership. And it was started as the first partners were the Tantur Ecumenical Institute and the Elijah Interfaith Institute, and many other organizations continue to and have participated in the past. And of course, recently we added the Friends Across Faith initiative to the partnership. And praying is, of course, what people of faith do. And there's an enormous strength in us praying together, regardless of faith. We've always said in this series that although moving to a weekly gathering rather than the monthly was a response to the horrific events of October 7th, these prayers are for the Holy Land, but not just for the Holy Land. We pray for all those around the world who are in distress, and we pray with gratitude for all the good things that are bestowed on us and others around the world as well. It's a sense of gratitude, it's a sense of family, and this expresses our faith that prayer matters. And last week's gathering, where we were just prayers, I think had a very powerful feeling to it. But our format is, of course, learning and prayers. Alon Goshen-Gostein, who's director of the Elijah Interfaith Institute, has always reminded us that in the Jewish tradition, learning is a form of worship, is a form of prayer. They're considered parallel or equivalent acts in Judaism. So when we gather here and we learn together, that is a form of worship as well. And the other thing is to appreciate the commonalities between our faiths, but also the unique things we learn from bringing people from different faiths together. It's not just that we all say the same thing with slightly different words. There actually is a unique contribution that each of these faiths brings to us, and that is something that we appreciate so much, that we can learn from people of different faiths and across the globe. Because one of the things that's happened by taking on this hybrid mode of Zoom and in person is we've expanded our community, and I'm sure today is no different. We didn't really have an opportunity to find out who's here, but we have people usually from the United States, from Europe, from the Middle East, and sometimes we get from the East as well. That really makes us very happy to expand. Unfortunately, and I mentioned this earlier, the people in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia and others, can't, the time zone doesn't, sorry, I shouldn't say the Southern Hemisphere, that's not what it's about. In different time zones, it doesn't work for them to join us live. But we are very pleased that we have these gatherings available on both Facebook and YouTube, and many Australians contact me or Elijah Interfaith afterwards and let us know that they have benefited from these gatherings as well. Today we're starting a new, like a mini series. We recently did a series on 3 of the festivals that occurred one after the other. We did on Ramadan, on Purim, and on Easter. And now we are going to do a mini-series on the concept of freedom. Our overarching theme is still the dignity of the human person. But just as we looked at the messages of our sacred seasons for the dignity of the human person, we're now going to look at freedom as a component of human dignity. I think most people will recognize that my timing was around the Festival of Freedom of Pesach, but it was also inspired by the fact that so many people don't feel free at the moment. Here in Israel, one of the big debates is how can we celebrate Pesach, Passover, while we have 129 is the current estimate of living hostages in Gaza. And of course, people in Gaza themselves who are entrapped by war, as well as people in other places who are not free. This Festival of Freedom a few years ago felt like the world was moving towards freedom, and we find ourselves in 2024 in a position where freedom seems elusive for so many people. But of course, it doesn't stop it being an important human value and religious value. And we're starting the series with a Christian perspective, obviously not the only Christian perspective, and that's one of the beautiful things also about Praying Together in Jerusalem, is the ability to bring, sometimes the intra-faith dialogue is as important as the interfaith dialogue. So we'll be hearing today from Archbishop Antje Jackelén from Sweden, who is a Lutheran, and her bio is in the chat. But Tali, you might want to put it again, as many people have come in since that opened. And I'm going to invite her to join me, and we will begin our discussion on freedom. Here we go. Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for joining us. Before you teach, and you're going to teach us a text or refer to an important text in your tradition, Antje, I don't know whether you wanted to just say some introductory words. First of all, maybe introduce yourself for a little bit more. And as a member of the Elijah Board of World Religious Leaders, I feel like you're an old friend, but not everybody on the call knows you. So perhaps a few words about yourself, and then freedom as a concept, and into the text. I'm just going to allow you to share and talk as you feel you would like to. And if I interrupt you, it may be for clarification or a question. So thank you, and over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Peta, and thank you for having me. It feels wonderful to be able to be the first speaker on this new aspect of freedom. As you heard, my name is Antje Jackelén. I'm Archbishop Emerita, that is retired, of the Church of Sweden. I served as Archbishop for 8 years. Prior to that as a bishop, but also as a parish pastor. I have also academic interests. My research area is the dialogue between science and religion, but also interested in ecumenism, so the intra-faith dialogue, but also the interfaith dialogue. Currently, I serve part-time as senior advisor at Lund University. So that's a little bit who I am. And with that, I just want to introduce you to this this little book, a writing by Martin Luther, who obviously was quite important, is quite important in the evangelical Lutheran tradition. It's on the freedom of a Christian, and this is actually the copy I used when I was a student. It has the, let's see whether we can make this. It has the Latin on one side, and it has the Old German on the other side. So it is a small but remarkable publication. It was produced in the space of only a very few weeks and published in German November 1520, and in Latin later that month. Its historical effect can hardly be overstated. 5 centuries later, its thoughts on the connection between freedom and love remain relevant. Of course, there's no straight line from Luther's on the freedom of a Christian to today's freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and freedom of belief. He wrote before the age of the Enlightenment and before the throne and the altar parted ways. Nevertheless, this little treatise passionate confession to a freedom that goes hand in hand with built with a binding social responsibility remains relevant. And in his accompanying letter to the then Pope Leo X, Luther himself says, "It is a small book if you regard its size. Unless I am mistaken, however, it contains the whole of Christian life in a brief form, provided you grasp its meaning." He was not always so kind to the Pope, as you know. At the time when the book was published, Luther's own freedom was threatened by the lawlessness in which he would soon find himself due to a papal bull of excommunication. And I think today's attacks on freedom have a completely different guise, but are just as concrete. Surveillance capitalism, conspiracy theories, distorted information that becomes a patchwork of lies, freedom of expression that is abused for persecution and hate, or limited by political powers, and the limitation of democratic rights in the wake of the pandemic or the rise of autocratic states throughout the world. So how can the freedom of a Christian help? Luther says that a person who has had a taste of faith, even if only a little, knows that what a life-giving force it is, not least in stressful situations. And to explain this as succinctly as possible, Luther starts his treatise with two seemingly opposite principles. One, a Christian is a perfectly free lord of all, subject to none. And the second, a Christian is a perfectly dutiful servant to all, subject to all. So that's the core of this little book. Faith is first and foremost an experience of freedom. The principal concept of the 16th century Reformation is that love cannot be earned through good works. God's benevolence can only be received for free as a gift of grace. So allowing yourself to be loved is not always the easiest thing for us humans to do. But faced with the source of life itself, God, it is the only suitable approach to allow yourself to be loved, to enjoy what is true, good, and beautiful, that what we have named God. Faith is having trust and confidence in what is always bigger than we can feel and think, in God who is love. Freedom does not commence with belief in the truth of certain statements or with some kind of mysterious feelings, but with a trust that thrives in the light of the day, even if the day is a dark one. Expressed in the language of the Reformation, a person who is made righteous by grace through faith and then builds on this is truly a free person. I mean, usually we ask as human beings through three major questions. Is there meaning? Am I good enough? Am I loved? And where these questions have been answered with a divine yes, we can sort of relax in our struggle to achieve. If you no longer expend your energy on saving yourself, you have much greater freedom to meet the needs of other people. You become free from something and simultaneously free for something. In the freedom of faith, our scope grows for hearing the call of others, taking responsibility on contributing to the common good. In practical life, this is obviously not always as crystal clear. Time after time, we lose this fundamental freedom and find ourselves bogged down in bonds, sometimes very unhealthy ones. Luther explains this by stating that a person's inner and a person's outer are fighting each other. Now, the inner and the outer are two aspects of a person that form a whole. It's not that one is body and one is soul and they oppose each other. And it's not the body that represents the bad aspects of a person. It is not about disdain for body, but it's about the struggle between, on the one hand, the trust of faith that liberates, and the external striving for acceptance. The striving is misdirected, according to Luther, because it wants to gain something forcibly that we only can receive as a gift. Where freedom is real, we have access to a spiritual force that also prevails in times of corporeal oppression. This is a splendid privilege, says Luther. It's the quote, a spiritual dominion in which there is nothing so good and nothing so evil, but that it shall work together for good to me, if only I believe. Lo, this is the inestimable power and liberty of Christians, end of quote. So the foundation of Christian freedom is, according to Christian faith, the relationship to Jesus Christ as both a human being and God. Jesus lived as a human being, but in perfect freedom. Through his death and resurrection, he is the actual guarantor of freedom. Luther often writes in a very disarmingly, very down-to-earth manner. But here, when he speaks about this, he uses mystical language. He speaks of the blessed exchange and how through faith, Christ and the soul celebrate marriage. Christ shoulders all burdens, and the soul gains full freedom. With the love poetry of the Song of Solomon, he puts the inner life of faith into words. My beloved is mine, and I'm his. However, it doesn't stay mystical when it comes to Luther. It very soon turns practical again. The passionate delight at the union with the truest, the most good and the most beautiful is immediately brought down to earth by the varied conditions of everyday life. Life should be lived in the here and now. Here we are to spend time with people and to take responsibility for family, work, society, and the world. This is best done when the outer person is shaped in accordance with the internal one, according to the motto, a good tree bears good fruit. Freedom expresses itself in love for our fellow humans. A person who is free through faith is also free to commit themselves in love. And here's another quote from the book itself. Behold, from faith thus flow forth love and joy in the Lord, and from love a joyful, willing, and free mind that serves one's neighbor willingly. End of quote. So love and joy flow from faith. In freedom we receive, in love we give to other people according to their needs. Freedom changes people's will and attitude. To a person who is free, fellow human beings cease to be a means of self-affirmation. Instead, a genuine interest in their well-being grows. Where love rules, the other person's freedom of conscience is safeguarded, irrespective of which faith community he or she belongs to. Anyone wanting to live in a Christian's freedom must also safeguard other people's freedom, regardless of whether they are Christian or not. The conclusion is that a Christian does not live isolated in their own ego, but in Christ and in their neighbor, in Christ through faith and in their neighbor through love. Through faith, they sort of ascend to God, and through love, they rapidly return to the nitty-gritty of everyday life. And precisely so always remain in the divine love. Luther says that this is a spiritual and true freedom. It is more excellent than all other liberty, just as clearly as heaven outshines earth. And no, Luther himself did not always live up to this freedom, neither when he turned against the rebelling peasants, nor when he incited hatred and violence towards Jews, positions that have had fatal consequences over centuries. Yet the union of freedom of faith and the responsibility of love has been both powerful and transformational for society. Of course, Luther was no Democrat, and the Reformation was not a democracy movement. Yet the emphasis on the freedom and responsibility of every person has been important in the emergence of modern democracy and human rights. Sundays and public holidays are reminders of the fundamental significance of freedom. And here I think Christians can learn a lot from the observation of Shabbat. Sunday is a day of freedom, safeguarding the fact that we are more than what we achieve through our work and more than we can buy and sell. It is a day of freedom for the purpose of nurturing the basic relationships that make up our life with ourselves, with others, with the whole of creation, and with God. Sunday as a day of freedom signals human dignity. It expresses the dignity of a human as a free and loving being. I sometimes think of the oppressive system that prevailed in Eastern Germany, the GDR, until 1989, and included attempts to instrumentalize faith and the church. Christian freedom was a threat. Nevertheless, it was in churches in particular that freedom was safeguarded. They became oases for freedom, places where you could take a step outside the system and claim space for reflection, meditation, and prayer, but also for tough discussions. The freedom of a Christian expressed itself in safeguarding the freedom of conscience and revealing false force. Thus, it became a contributing condition for the downfall of the regime. When the level of public debate, as we see in these days, sinks to scandalization of people, when fundamental moral issues are treated through polarization, when discernment and personal character are replaced by obeying rules and policies, when citizens are reduced to customers and consumers, and when vital political discussions end up in the shadow of constant popularity surveys, that's when it becomes important to re-highlight the foundations of freedom and the social responsibility that is the fruit of freedom. This freedom is not just an internal attitude that affects a person's life. It also encompasses a radical social vision because it requires that the people who govern view and exercise their power as a service for those they are elected to govern. they are free to serve. So freedom is not a reality or a property. Its power is often concealed by the opposite. There is a, well, maybe not beautiful, but an interesting poem by Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a theologian and participant in the resistance movement, who was executed by the Nazis shortly before the end of World War II. The poem's title is Who Am I? And the poem starts with a few lines about how Christians' freedom overcomes external imprisonment. He writes, "Who am I? They often tell me I step from my cell's confinement calmly, cheerfully, firmly, like a squire from his country house. Who am I? They often tell me that I talk to my gods freely and friendly and clearly, as though it were mine to command." And then a few stanzas follow that are imbued with self-assessment, self-doubt even. Am I really that which others tell of? Bonhoeffer gives an unembellished voice to the longing, the anger, the fear, the powerlessness that he also feels. His concern for family and friends whom he now is unable to care for. His feeling of emptiness and lack of strength. His external crisis corresponds to the self-doubt of his internal crisis. Am I really who I seem to be? Am I like this today and different tomorrow? Am I both? Am I free and not free? Good and evil? The resolution to this struggle is presented in the last lines of the poem. There he returns to the actual foundation of the freedom that impressed his prison guards, namely trust, faith. So the last lines, who am I? Lonely questions mock me. Whoever I am, you know me. I'm yours, O God. So he remained loyal to freedom despite being imprisoned and executed. Most of us live our lives in far less extreme circumstances. However, threats to freedom exist. We all know that. And even today, there's every reason to remind ourselves and each other of how spiritual freedom, however we ground it in our respective traditions, how spiritual freedom and concrete social responsibility are linked with each other. So that's the reflection I wanted to offer. So thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much. I was really taken by the fact that you made it very much a part of an interfaith conversation about the fact that our freedom is dependent on the freedom of each other, and true freedom respects the freedom of the other, which was something I wanted to ask you about. But I just wondered whether you had a moment to think with me, because normally when we talk about freedom, we talk about freedom from. And you mentioned Luther's situation, that he was not necessarily in a unthreatened environment when he wrote, but was it freedom from it? I don't think it's about freedom from political oppression. It's something else. It's freedom from what? Antje, can you summarize that?
Yeah, his central insight was that's freedom from proving yourself worthy before God, basically. I mean, he had this history of being a monk and wanting to be really holy, and did everything striving for pleasing God. And then he was struck by this insight that it's a hopeless enterprise, because it is given, acceptance is given by grace, and you understand it through faith. And that's for him the basis, or the base of freedom. Because if you are free, if you no longer have to impress on God, if you can say, well, there is a yes to my existence, that also frees you to interact more freely with your fellow humans and with basic creation as well.
Thank you. I'd like to invite other people to join the conversation, and you can do it by raising your hand, and Tully will identify you and move you forward. Is there somebody who would like to join the conversation, either to ask a question or have a reflection or resonance from what you've heard? And while people are thinking about what they would like to contribute, I'd just like to say I was very grateful for you mentioning at least one contemporary figure that we know a little bit about in Bonhoeffer, but that you reminded me, of course, of even more recent cases. Nelson Mandela wrote about freedom while in that situation, and here in Israel we celebrate Natan Sharansky, who as a prisoner of Zion was able to say he's never been more free than when he was a prisoner. So we do have the contemporary, and Nelson Mandela, of course, spoke from within a deep Christian faith, and Sharansky from within a deep Jewish faith of freedom not being dependent on their physical environments, the contrary. Do we have people who've indicated they'd like to join the discussion at this time? So maybe the other thing that really struck me with your conversation was to understand a little bit more about, you drew many times on contemporary issues, but is there any part of Luther's thesis on freedom that you feel is no longer a problem for us, or perhaps I'll turn it the other way around as well, no longer relevant? Or is the text as relevant today as it was when he wrote it? Or there are parts of it that are dated, or even parts that have been so commonly accepted that we don't need to read it anymore to learn?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that can be said in that regard. Of course, if Luther's question was, how can I have a merciful God? People would say today, I don't care about God. Many people would say, even people who identify as cultural Christians have said, this is not my major question. My major question is, am I acceptable to myself? Or what is the meaning in my life? So it becomes more personal, more anthropocentric in a way. But then the question of acceptance and being able to actually have this trust that frees you from self-occupation and makes you, makes it easier, probably, gives more space for love, put it that way. So that I think is in a sense perpetual. Another thing that is important or interesting about this is, of course, this these two principles that contradict each other. I think in evangelical Lutheran theology, much is about, Lutheran theology comes in pairs often. It's the inner or outer person, it's the freedom and the service, it is the revealed God and the hidden God. It is before people and before, and it's a theology of the cross and the theology of glory, and so on. And the art of being a theologian is actually to be able to spell out what these relationships are, because some of them are really both and at the same time, whereas others are either or, and you better know the difference. Now this is more anecdotal, As I said before, I have done research in the area of science and religion, the dialogue, and I once came across a paper where the author had the point said, well, it's not a coincidence that the fathers of quantum physics were steeped in Lutheran spirituality, because they were so used to, well, it's both freedom and service. So they could make sense of this core principle in quantum physics, that something can be a particle and a wave at the same time. Now, I think that may be overdoing it, but it illustrates the fact that I mean, it sort of shapes a little bit your thinking if you're trained into handling pairs and trying to see, is this either or, is this both and, or something in between?
Well, you'd know that that's also very Kabbalistic. Everything's got its balance, and the tree, and this is something that most of us in this group will share. The concept of the tree in the garden was tree of good and evil, and the question is it tree of good and evil because good and evil are so connected to one another, and that only the eating actually spreads them out, but essentially they're one and the same thing, you know. And the prophet Isaiah also refers to God as the God of good and the God of evil, and you know, this is the starting point for Kabbalistic understandings of that dualism in the world. So we have it too, we share it, which might explain why there are many of the physicists are also Jewish. So.
Right.
But yes, but I think that is sometimes used as the definition of faith, as being able to hold opposites at the same time. That's what faith is really about. There's still a moment left if anybody who's not joined the conversation now would like to do so. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment or ask a question? Because if not, then Antje, I would invite you to conclude your presentation to us in prayer. This is Praying Together in Jerusalem, and essentially we'd like to conclude your part of the presentation with a prayer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God, our refuge and strength, you have bestowed on us the precious gift of freedom, and you have bound us together in a common life as humankind and as all creation. In all the crises we are facing, help us to act beyond hatred or bitterness, to listen for your voice amid competing claims, and to work together with mutual forbearance and respect. Help us to live in the freedom you're giving us, to serve others, to be and become humans who work for peace and well-being, for people and creation, also in the midst of the inhumane. We pray this for the sake of your great mercy. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you for your beautiful teaching, powerful and important teaching, a wonderful launch to the series. You've planted many, many seeds, which we will now follow up from our other teachers. And I'm sure that everybody who speaks about freedom from now on will have to keep in mind what Luther offered us as a challenge. So thank you very much for bringing that. It's now my great pleasure to invite Rabbi and friend, one of the founders. I've told other people many times that Praying Together in Jerusalem actually came out of an event that Eliyahu McLean was chairing. When Father Russ McDougall and myself found ourselves at the same point in an open space exercise. And so Eliyahu, in many ways, could be seen therefore as the father of this enterprise. And he also has for a period worked with Elijah Interfaith Institute as well. But now he's moved on to many things, and perhaps Eliyahu, before you lead us with both your response to Antje and your prayer, you might say a little bit about what you're doing as well. Thanks.
Hi, shalom, everyone. Thank you for the beautiful teaching. So I'm now at home in Ramat Beit Shemesh. I live in Ramat Beit Shemesh in a Hasidic ultra-Orthodox neighborhood. Ramat Beit Shemesh Bet, Yiddish-speaking Hasidim on Shabbat, going out with a fur hat and a black coat and praying with the Breslov Hasidic community. It's very, very meaningful. Very, very interesting and meaningful community to live in, and a way of a lifestyle to get close to God. So being immersed in the Hasidic Judaism and Hasidic prayer community, I very much resonated with the teaching that was given, thank you, about the origin of Luther's teachings on freedom. For a religious Jew, for our community, freedom is symbolized by one number, 613. 613 are the positive and negative mitzvot, commandments, the do's and don'ts, on a simple way of what we believe and understand that the creator of heaven and earth, Hashem, Adonai, has laid out in his holy text, the Torah. So freedom is to be able to live and to keep the do's, like remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, and the don'ts, don't eat non-kosher food, separation of man and wife during certain times of the month, etc. Freedom to study Torah, Talmud, Jewish law, and to pray 3 times a day to our Creator on weekdays, on Shabbat, which is coming up tomorrow. Jewish holidays, we just had the holiday of Purim. We're going into Pesach. We're now in a very interesting period. We're all crazily turning our houses upside down to find that little bit of chametz, that little bit of ego place to get to freedom. It's a journey to freedom. Is leading up in a week and a half to the Passover Seder, the story of our journey to freedom, the children of Israel when we were enslaved in Egypt, right? And our journey, our long walk to freedom, as Rabbi Lord Sachs, Jonathan Sachs, used to say, long walk to freedom, our journey to freedom, the exodus from Egypt. So that is our freedom story, and that is coming up. So these few weeks before Passover, as we're, I can show you, this is just, my office space filled with papers, and I'm taking out old boxes and, going through files of articles about praying together in Jerusalem from the early days, 7-8 years ago, and Jerusalem Hug and all the interfaith meetings and stuff. What do I need to keep? What do I need to toss? To clean out the chametz, to clean out the things that I don't need, to get rid of, to be free. So, and I really resonated what you also spoke about, the unity, the contradiction of the opposites. Also, that is very much the essence of the Talmudic way of thinking. When you study the Talmud, it's Elu ve'elu, divrei Elokim Hayim. You have the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. You have the Jerusalem Talmud and you have the Babylonian Talmud. You have debates with completely contrasting schools of thought and ideals and ideology about how to apply. There's the Bible, right? There's the Torah, and then there's Mishnah and Talmud and Jewish law and all that comes after it, because for 2,000 years, our sages, our holy rabbis debated and argued and discussed, how do you apply, keeping the Shemitah, the seventh year, when you're supposed to let the land rest, but what are the practicalities of how to do it? Or keeping the laws of Shabbat, it's all such a vast, interesting and fascinating religious legal system, that when we get into the details, that tiny little details, actually, the more I study and the more I learn and the more I understand, the debate among the sages of our tradition about the divine will of God, I'm actually free. I'm more free to the more I take on of the 613 commandments, the positive and the negative, the do's and don'ts, it's actually freeing, because when you don't have, at least for me, coming from a background as a Baal Tshuva, someone who grew up in a spiritual, universalist spiritual background, where everything is open and everything is free and freedom of choice, and to actually have the structure, to have the framework, is actually freeing, because it gives you a path in life. I would like to make a prayer, just a simple prayer also. We're in 6 months now of the Gaza-Israel war, and I always want to include that in our prayers, that there should be wisdom in the leaders also of both sides, to bring our two peoples back to freedom, because I think we've been trapped in a vicious cycle of fear and hatred and separation. And religion has certainly been a motivation for the Hamas, interpretation of Islam and Judaism. And some say Amalek, we need to fight back, and we need to, there's been an abuse and misuse of religion in the Holy Land, in supremacist claims, and not in the open, inclusive claims. So I'd like to say, in that spirit of freedom, that may the wisdom of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam praying together in Jerusalem, may the wisdom of our Abrahamic faiths and the wisdom of the Torah enlighten our Israeli political leaders to find a way to get out of this horrific situation we're in Gaza, and to restore freedom to the citizens of southern Israel, to the citizens of the northern borders who are suffering from rocket fire from Hezbollah, a lot who are dealing with rockets, from all sides. May our leaders find a way to imbue the wisdom of our tradition, to find also a spirit of compromise, and may the leaders of the Palestinians also listen to wisdom and advice, and to understanding, that, putting your people, in harm's way, and human shields and all of that, it's not going to bring justice or equality or dignity or a state or freedom to the Palestinian people either. We both need freedom. Our freedom is intertwined. Our freedom is connected to each other. One cannot oppress the other. One cannot drive the other out. We're all destined to share. The children of Abraham, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, Israelis, Palestinians, we still have to share this land. And we Israelis should, of course, we want freedom for the people of Gaza to have food, right? To have 500 aid trucks is just the beginning per day. It's finally going in. There needs to be enough food. There needs to be a rebuilding of Gaza, and the rebuilding of Jewish communities, the kibbutzim, where the people were killed on October 7th, murdered in their houses, of rebuilding. And may we all learn to live in true freedom, connected to our understanding of what our faith is, and that hopefully our freedom will come and not at an expense of our neighbors.
Why are you doing this? Somebody just bought products. Hello?
Amen. Thank you, Eliyahu. I think you just said something very beautiful that ties in with what Antje said, that the recognition that our freedom is actually dependent on the freedom of our neighbors, of our fellow human beings, and this idea that we can't be truly free if we're denying freedom to others. And that's a common message from both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that it's also moving to the summertime means moving to kids' bedtime, but we appreciate you being here very much. Thank you. But I will also just add that you've mentioned several times the Abrahamic faiths, the three faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And of course, in just a little while, we're also going to have a Hindu reflection, because our world is expanded beyond those.
Of course, this is the Elijah Institute. You have to have Hindu, we have Sikh partners, we have Buddhist partners, we have Baha'i, we have, there are other Abrahamic religions too, the Baha'is and the Druze, I could include many more. Yes.
So thank you. Thank you very much indeed. As you all know, we've finished the month of Ramadan, and our Muslim partners are celebrating. I don't think there's a Muslim on the call at the moment, and that's because they're celebrating their Eid al-Fitr. And in the middle of her busy time, Fawzia took time. It was just a few hours ago, very late last night, my time. Fawzia took time to prepare a prayer for us today, and we're now going to listen to her prayer. I asked her first to just say a few words about the feast that she's celebrating, and you'll also hear that for a reason that was inexplicable to her and to me, of course, is she'd lost her voice. She tells me an email that's actually come back now. It was only from the period of the prayer, but we can still hear and understand her. So Talia, if you could share that prayer from Fawzia, that would be great.
So this Eid or feast is the culmination of the fasting month of Ramadan, and during which we fasted for 29 to 30 days, 1 lunar month. And so it's a great feast, a feast where family and friends get together. We have morning congregational prayers, and then we continue on with a lot of food and gathering and celebration. And, the children love it, the elders love it, and the moms do extra work.
We know about that one. We have Pesach coming, as you know, and I think that just about sums it up as well. And of course, during Ramadan, you and some of our other teachers explained that although this is a feast, there's a certain sadness that Ramadan is leaving as well.
That's right, yes. When we see the new moon, the new moon of the next lunar month, and so for many, it's a time of immediate celebration in many countries. I'm originally from Pakistan, and people go out all night the previous that eve of Eid, and go to the bazaars, and it's just a festival in the streets. But other people, the more contemplative ones, they feel sad because it's a great month of an abundance of blessings, in which we are told that the devils are chained and the blessings are just coming towards us. So that month is closing. And so you obviously feel a sadness, and you never know if you will ever see another Ramadan, or if that might have been your last Ramadan. So there's some reflection on those.
Sobering thought indeed. Well, especially as your voice is clearly giving you trouble, and I'm very grateful that you took the time out from your celebration to offer a prayer for us. but maybe we should just give you a moment and ask you to offer your prayer for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can you make out what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. So usually when you've asked me to do prayers, I've found prayers in our tradition, or done the rosary, the recitation of the names of God. But this time I wrote this prayer, like a supplication myself. So I will read it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I begin in God's name, the most gracious, the most merciful. Our Lord, the month of Ramadan has come to an end. We thank and praise you for having bestowed us with life, health, faith, and aspiration, so we could benefit from its great blessings. Through your great generosity, accept our efforts, our fasting, our charity, our prayers, our service, however little or lacking they may have been. For those of us living in safe places, we have felt the weight of the pain, hunger, fear, and suffering that our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank, in the Sudan, and in other conflicts around the world have been enduring. Our Lord, alleviate their suffering and bless them with safety, security, dignity, sustenance, and an enduring peace in the lands where they reside. Our Lord, even though these aspirations seem unattainable to our human minds, you are the best of planners, and you can bring about every good for your servants. Our Lord, we beg you, illuminate our hearts and the hearts of all human beings with compassion, mercy, kindness, generosity, and forgiveness towards each other, so that cycles of violence can end, and our children, our youth, our future generations are able to live with hope, faith, opportunity, and peace for everyone, everywhere. Amen.
Thank you to Fausia for that beautiful prayer. I mentioned a moment ago that we are inclusive more broadly than the three main Abrahamic faiths. And there's a lovely idea that the word Brahmin actually comes from Abraham as well. And that's a nice concept to think that we are all children of the person that in our tradition recognized the existence first of one creator God. And I know that many Hindus are certainly thinking also about the one creator God, even though there are many manifestations and representations of that one God. But I'll allow Swamini to join me and ask her to introduce in a little bit more detail the Hindu tradition from which she is coming, and then lead us in a meditation. Thank you for joining us, Swamini. And if you want to reflect on what you've heard on freedom as well, please.
Thank you so much. It's been such a delight to hear the wisdom on this Zoom today. I feel very filled and full of delight. Thank you for this opportunity for us to come together. People think, when they think of Hinduism, of a million zillion different gods, but actually Hinduism is in reality a monotheistic faith. What a surprise to hear that. Hinduism is a what now? A monotheistic faith. Why is this strange woman saying this? What it comes down to in many of the mystical traditions, especially in the East, is that we all come from oneness, from one loving, benevolent creator. It's all within us. God is living in our heart. God is living in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every smile, in everything you see in this world is a fragment of God, part of one divine whole. So why are there so many different gods that you see? Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, the Divine Mother in different forms, you name it. Why is that? Well, what the sages say is that we all see God differently. We all perceive God differently. Some might perceive God as without any form whatsoever, and that is so beautiful because that is so true. And some perceive God as many forms or as one form, and that is so beautiful because that is so true. And so emerges all the different forms and faces of divinity. But the most important teaching that we can learn, that we must spread, is a Sanskrit term of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We are all one family. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. We are all one family from one God, indivisible, always part and partial of each other. Now, I'm saying this because Peta just kindly asked me to say a few words about this particular subject. But what I'd really like to do is change subjects, if that's okay. Because what I'm feeling is so much pain in this world. I know in our day-to-day lives, we are struggling with our own internal battles, our own internal pains. What to do? What to do? When I was here last, I talked about a few different methods for trying to overcome some of that pain that we're walking around with every single day. Today, I'd like to teach a very simple technique that anyone can use of any faith. In fact, it's an interfaith technique that you can make your own to help you get through the day and spread some more peace. The mind, who was it? Saint Therese of Lisieux said the mind is like a madman in the attic who's just running around screaming and shouting, thinks nobody has any idea what our minds are saying, but we do. And sometimes it's so distracting, even to the great saints. One thing that the Eastern sages often say is find an anchor, to anchor your thoughts, to anchor your awareness as all this commotion is going on inside. Find an anchor that you can hold on to. Thoughts will come and go, and we can watch them come and go, but we can also hold on to something else. One easy way of doing that is through our breath. The sages say through our breath, we can actually find freedom. With every breath in is new birth. Every breath out is breathing out the old. And as we breathe, we can anchor our thoughts to maybe a word. In an ashram where I studied years ago in South India, in the middle of a tiger reserve, it was so hum, breathing in so, breathing out hum. It means I am that. I am part of God. But we can also breathe in any breathe in one syllable and breathe in any out syllable, such as Jesus, Jesus, Jesu, Allah, Shalom, Shalom. Whatever it might be, I would imagine there might be one word, one two-syllable word, or two one-syllable words that are important to you. I'll give you a second. If you could think of any two-syllable word or any two one-syllable words, what would it be? Now, with that firmly in mind, and you can always change it, relax a little bit. You can take a little deep breath and just kind of let your shoulders go. Lift your shoulders up to your ears and down if you like. Just relax the body because it can get so tense, especially as we sit in front of the computers. And with your eyes either focused on one spot in the room, or if you'd like to, closing your eyes, just breathe in whatever it is you'd like to breathe in, that one syllable, and breathe out the next, gently. If there's any tension, you can just let it go. Any thoughts, let them go, and just go back to your anchor. And if breathing doesn't feel right to you, lift your right finger, one of your fingers up with one syllable and down with the next, tying that together. Thoughts might come, let them go. Relax. In and out. Now coming back, because we have little time, just rub your hands together. Really quickly rub your hands. And then put them over your eyes and feel that heat for that lovely, lovely feeling. For a moment, you can open your eyes and drop your hands. May your life be a blessing to this world. May each blessing that you give multiply. And when you want, anywhere you want, if you're feeling happy or sad or stressed or anxious, whatever, or nothing at all, you can feel free to continue your prayer. Standing in the grocery line, let that be a holy time for you, wherever you might be. This is a beautiful way to continue your life of prayer, life of remembrance. May you be blessed always. Om, Shalom, Salam, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Swamini. Thank you. And I really appreciate your allusion to the fact that we are all in a very difficult time, and the bringing some light to that difficult time, or a way of us dealing with it. So thank you so much indeed. You also made me aware that we hadn't commented earlier about the importance of self-awareness and everything that Antje taught us as well. In the one hand, not letting that self-awareness be too intellectual, allowing the love-in, as Antje talked about in Luther's thesis, is not worrying too much, But on the other hand, that the self-awareness is part of that awareness of who we are as a creature of the divine, as God's creation. So thank you. Thank you very much for teaching us that. The focus today is on Christian understandings of freedom, and I thought it was very important that we finish with another Christian prayer. And I see it's also getting very dark here because I mentioned the fact that we came into sunset. So as I invite Sister Rita, from the beginning, she's been part of our Praying Together in community, as have many of the Sisters of Zion based here in Jerusalem. And I'm going to invite her to lead us in the final prayer, which takes us back to where we started, Christian, perhaps, perspectives on freedom, or certainly reflection of freedom, and that she'll share with us. And excuse me while I stand up to turn on the light, but it doesn't mean I'm not listening to you, Rita.
This is a prayer entitled, A Prayer Everyone Can Pray. It was written by Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk, a writer, and a peace activist. It is taken from his writings from Thoughts in Solitude. And I feel that during this terrible time that we are living through, suffering through, we could identify with many aspects of this prayer. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think that I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore will I trust you always, though I may seem to be lost and in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Amen.
Amen. And how beautiful, Rita, that you took us back to where Antje started. So that, and maybe she'd even like to come in and comment, because I found here this if you like, dilemma. Thomas Merton in your prayer spoke about wanting to please God, or the desire to please God. And Antje said, but Luther taught us that you don't bring a God's love by wanting, by working towards it. It's right there anyway. But maybe the desire to serve God is not, maybe it's not a contradiction. The desire to serve God is not in order that God will love you. The desire to serve God is in and of itself an act of love and a source of love, but not a condition for love. Is that Antje, do you want to come in and reflect on Rita's prayer in light of what you taught us?
Yeah, well, I mean, what was the expression that my desire to please you actually pleases you? I think was the wording Thomas Merton used. And that could be interpreted as being a way of realizing, well, I can never get there. I just receive it. So this is an act of trust and faith as well, I guess. Of course, Luther was so much more outspoken about it because it was the big thing in his life. So that was why he was so explicit about it's only about justification by faith, by grace through faith. That was his core thing. But I mean, nowadays this is also, there is in Christian the church this joint declaration on the doctrine of justification, which started as an agreement between Lutherans and Catholics, but now is widely accepted throughout the Christian churches. The Methodists are part of it, the Anglicans are part of it, the Reformed are parts of it. So I think it's getting somewhere.
It's very beautiful because obviously you did not consult with one another about either the prayer or the teaching, and they come together almost as an exemplar of what we were talking about the entire time, holding all of this as a matter of faith, and in doing so drawing down divine love. And if I could ask Tully to go onto gallery view, let's see everybody who's here, and note that each of us in our own way is drawing on God, drawing God down. Are we on gallery view? Mine isn't showing that way, but maybe it's just what I'm on. Lovely to see everybody. We're drawing down the divine and divine love, each in our own way. But perhaps as we learned from Luther, it's not an act it's not something we can do. It's something that comes from above. But we can pray together that it does come from above. And we can do our best on this earth to do only good deeds. As Swamini said to us, may we all be instruments of good on this earth. And I was very touched when Hannah last week chose to, she's in the Zoom now, chose to teach or to draw on St. Francis's prayer of make me an instrument of love, all drawing on the idea that we want to feel that we're doing something positive in very difficult times, that we're drawing down love. And maybe we can't make God love us, and maybe we don't need to make God love us, but we do need to work for our fellow human being. We do that good we do need to do. And our desire to do what God wants from us is something that perhaps improves this world. So let's take a moment of just, I know some people have their cameras off, but if you can turn them on, it's great, because then we can just spend a moment looking at each other, appreciating each other's support and just presence, and feeling that we've had a very important time together. Thank you for being here. Let's take a moment just to feel grateful. It's been a beautiful gathering, and a very a gathering which has been food for thought, and will continue to stay with us over the next few weeks as we continue to explore freedom as a component of the dignity of the human person. Thank you very much. Thank you to Antje, thank you to the prayer leaders, and thank you to everyone for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And Nancy, did you want to say something? Is that a raised hand intentionally?
It is. If I could just for a moment thank everyone for making this possible. I am a student of compassion, and everything that I've been studying for the last 3 years has come around to this connection with freedom, particularly because the compassionate movement is based on the golden rule. And it's been a great path for me of understanding that there is tremendous freedom in knowing ourselves well enough to be able to articulate how we want to be treated as we seek our own paths of freedom in our lives, in order for others to be able to honor our requests for how we want to be treated. So that reciprocity leads, I think, and enhances our freedom. So I'm just grateful, very grateful whenever I get to share this time with you. So
thank you so much. And we're glad you joined us, and hope that you will continue to do so. I'm looking around and seeing so many familiar faces, and thank you all for being part of this community. Some people had to leave early. They apologized ahead of time, but it's lovely that you stayed with us, and look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you very much, everyone.
God willing.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Antje.